Wow, packed house. This is great. Well, welcome to our first panel, talking about Beyond the Pilot and really how we're scaling AI across the enterprise. I'm Young Pham, the moderator for our first Powerhouse panel. One of the things that I know Bruno covered off on, but what we've been really helping companies with in the last couple of years is really how they've adopted AI. And so through that time period, we've really seen this really maturity curve that organizations originally started out with a lot of different POCs and different experiments. As they've gone through that, a model where they may have more of a center of excellence to try to scale it, and even as of late, where we're really seeing other companies go into it, is this hybrid model where that intersection of technology and the business workloads are starting to build together. And with that, obviously, different firms are really addressing it differently, but the big continual challenge that we hear all the time is, how do I scale it? How do I do it to where it's not individual, different members of different teams? And really, that's the focus of our talk. And so with that, I'd love for my panelists to introduce themselves. Mir?
Yeah. First of all, thank you to CNT for having me here. It's absolutely a pleasure. And introduce myself, Mir. So I work for the sweetest company in the world, Hershey's. So I'm sure the names ring the bell. So I lead the data and analytics team within Hershey. So we're on the transformation journey. We started a few months back, and I came in from Kraft Heinz, where I've come in with a little bit of learnings. I wouldn't say experience, and I know how to do it. I came with a lot of learnings from the transformation and build teams, scale teams, deployed AI, and learned a lot through the way. So the focus of Hershey is to really build that foundation, right? So if you really want, that's one thing I learned. If you really want to scale AI, you got to build a foundation. So the focus is building the foundation, getting the team ready, and really building that culture to really drive that, because AI is a tool, but it's actually a mindset too. It's a catalyst shift. So it's human plus AI, and that's the goal, and that's what I'm trying to do at Hershey.
Very nice. I love it. Hello, everyone. I'm Vivian. I'm Brazilian, based in the US. I have been working for the Coca-Cola company for some good years. I'm here representing a very, let's say, visionary team. We run a lot of experimentations. We call it experimentation at scale, which you told me that is the coolest title for someone to have. I fully agree with you. I think it is. It's very nice. So what we are trying to accomplish is basically learning agility at scale. So ensure the teams, they are set for success in terms of identifying hypotheses, running experiments, decoding practices, adopting practices, and then realizing the value of adopting those practices. But at scale means a lot. So it needs to be like that, because everything we touch at the Coca-Cola company, as you guys know, it's really huge. So that's what we are trying to accomplish. And of course, AI will be a very important element in this, is already a good and important element in the journey. So thank you, CINT, for having me, and hope we have a very nice conversation. Over to you, Keith.
So I'm Keith Davies. After about 18 years with Anheuser-Busch InBev, about a year and a half ago, I moved over to Medline Industries. For those of you that don't know Medline's on a mission to make healthcare run better, and they do that really by providing hospitals, surgery centers, outpatient clinics, all of those sorts of outlets with all the consumables that they need in order to provide the healthcare that their patients deserve, right? My role there is covering enterprise applications, which really covers supply chain applications, manufacturing applications, and the back office applications. And I really do think that this is sort of at the core of what Medline does, right, is warehousing. It's being very efficient. It's about getting product to those hospitals when they need it right away, right? So lots of challenges there in terms of assortment, in terms of timing, in terms of handling the volume of orders that we ended up having. And I think it's a right place for AI in the future.
For sure.
Great. Well, welcome to this panel. I'm excited. We'll go through it. Certainly, as we finish, they'll be available if you want to chat with us directly. But first question to you, Mir. One thing you talked about, you've had a career really doing a lot of transformation. And now as we're going through this AI transformation, you talked about the foundation and building it up. How do you look at the different ideas and really start to go, these are winners versus losers, or sort of build that weight around what really scales and commercializes?
Wow. It's a tough question. I don't know if anybody has mastered that, but I can share a framework that has worked back at Kraft, and that's what I'm trying to drive in Hershey too. So as we look at it, so first of all, we want to build a funnel, not a tunnel, right? When it says like make sure the ideas are coming, right? That's important to make sure that you have a good backlog and the ideas are coming, and we're encouraging the team to bring up. So that's important, because if that dries up, I mean, literally your innovation stops. So that's number one, encourage that. The second piece of it is to really have a good framework as to like, how do you realize that? So whether it's a product development life cycle or whatever internal framework that you have to drive this through from ideas to really scaling. So it's like, how do we look at it? And then as we build this out in a backlog and as we build this out into pilots, making sure you have the criteria well defined, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, you're not doing things for fun. You're doing things for aligning to your business and to really move that forward, whether it's top line or bottom line. So making sure you have the good criteria, right? So we look at the criteria to say, where does it fit into top 5 objectives that we have for 3-year roadmap or whatever you're trying to do? Where does it fit in? And then seeing this to say, is this a competitive advantage, or is this something that's commodity? So it's like, how do we put those little criteria in there and then really start that experimentation? The coolest title, I'd like to have that too. So really making sure the team drives that experimentation at speed. Agility is key, because you can't sit there, analysis, paralysis, make sure everything you get it right. So making sure you have that little pivot to make sure it's like, okay, this is the time frame and the return. So once you have this one, and then you really make a choice, right? So think of it as it's almost like a Shark Tank mentality, right? So you come in, you want to scale, and then you go back and pitch, it's like, we can deliver value on it, and you make choices. So we have the right team and the framework. From there on, but at the end of the day, we also look at adoption, we also look at leadership commitment on it, and then, the ability for people to upskill and really learn. Because you can put everything out on the shelf for 5,000 people. If only 5 uses, no value.
Yeah, great. And Vivian, following up on that, I know we chatted a little bit earlier. Part of that, creating that agility, you guys have organizing principles, so probably extending out what Mir talked about for frameworks.
Yeah.
What are those organizing principles that you guys are using?
Yeah, and that's very important, because we face the dilemma, and some of you might be facing as well, that the Coca-Cola company is doing, I believe, a really good job in terms of, bringing the foundations for AI to the organization since the very beginning with OpenAI and a Microsoft Copilot and many of these pieces. But then the teams, we are a very big organization, so the teams, they gotta focus AI on the big chunks, right? So in experimentation at scale, we knew in the very beginning that if we don't get that right, and we get that right now, we are gonna get disrupted, because the way we are managing this is not gonna be sustainable. But we don't want to derail the organization. We don't want to knock the doors and say, hey, can I become the user case for that? Because that might be not the priority. So that was the dilemma. We were kind of, what do we do? And then the way we enroll our sponsors inside the company was basically aligning some of the guiding principles, of organizing principles. The first one was, we don't want to build anything from scratch. We want to take advantage of any solution you have built for whichever team that it's in the front of the organization. How can that technology or that piece of work support what we are going to do with experimentation moving forward? That was the first one, and I think it was very important, because then they said, okay, cool, then we can ensure that the teams leading digital, they are going to support you, because that's not extra work. Actually, you are already scaling the technology, and it was very nice. The second one that I think is quite important is to, don't apply AI, don't bring AI to broken workflows. Before jumping into the solution, we assess our workflow running experimentation from the very moment of what is the business question we want to answer, how we have hypotheses that are good enough, all the way up to adoption. And CI&T came in, by the way, to assess the workflow with us. And then we saw the possibilities with AI. But that's another trap because you could do many things, but what are the things that you should do? So that's important to keep an eye on and fix the broken process before you apply technology. Because if you apply technology to something broken, you will scale a problem that you need. So that's very important. And people tend to jump into the solution quick without reflecting upon that. And I think that was a second organization. We have some of those, and I think it was quite important for the leadership to trust our judgment, and guys, you gotta go because you know what you are doing, and this is not gonna derail, it's gonna accelerate the organization. That's how we manage that.
Yeah, and Keith, starting at Medline and going through that, are you applying some of the same similar ideas and principles that Mir and Vivian talked about, or do you have additional ones that you're looking at as you're coming into an organization?
I think there's a lot of similarities. I think one of the first things you need to do is take a look at what is that full inventory of the possible areas in which you could be focusing. You want to make sure you got that centralized view so that you're all talking from that same kind of playbook and you can see which are the areas where you want to focus. Maybe one of the biggest things that I'll sort of share on top of what Vivi and Mir shared, I think it's really important to take these and not have them as sort of an isolated sort of set over here, right? You want to really embed the AI work that you're doing within your existing product teams, right? I think that does a couple things. I think it makes sure that the AI you're working on is already a company priority. If it weren't a company priority, you wouldn't have the product team there that's working on it. So I think that's important. I think also it helps you to drive a lot of adoption of that AI platform as well, if you really have that embedded within that product team too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just to follow up to that, you talked about the product teams, and I'll come back to each one. How are you organizing different, or how are you thinking about the traditional organization model within the company relative to product or technology? I talked about this hybrid structure. Are you guys there yet, or still something that to evolve to? So Keith, just working backwards from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are looking much more at product teams these days. I think especially in this AI space, right, you'll have a certain kind of idea about what you want to be doing. And then by embracing that product mindset, as you start working, you find new features, new areas in which you want to evolve that kind of a platform, right? So embracing that product mindset, I do think is very important for us as a group. We're still in a transition point from, I think, this sort of older school view of you've got project teams that have beginnings, middles, and ends. But we're seeing our tech teams a lot more engaged, motivated as they do start to embrace that idea and as they start to really understand the ownership that they have as they're part of a product team, right? So I think we're on that journey.
Yeah. Vivi, what about you?
Yeah, so I think we are all learners, what's going to happen. It's kind of easy to predict where technology is going, but how society will reshuffle around that, that's the challenge piece. So I would say that we are curious, learning and reading a lot. There is this concept of really hybrid teams coming in, and Microsoft has published the frontier firms. I think that's a very good piece of content for all of us to read. It's about the blend of augmenting our intelligence by, having combined teams with, human-led and probably machine-operated. So this is coming in some shape and form. And the more I think leaders reflect upon it and shape it better. So I would say that we don't have any solution, any kind of learning so far, but just this feeling that you gotta embrace it and you gotta learn about it. I would say that's the invitation.
Yeah, Mir?
Yeah, so those, plug for my LinkedIn. So I'm very passionate about product and operating model and things. So when we talk about product, I think it's a key. So companies really evolve from this project to product mindset. With that, truly thinking of things that you're building longer than just like the start, the middle, and the end, but beyond in terms of adding. So we definitely did scale the product model back when I was at Kraft Heinz, where we had agile teams and pods across, and that's the same mindset I brought to Hershey as well. It's like, how do we organize around a product to really help scale and build that team on? So product is something, and in order for us to scale, from the lens of scaling, that operating model is really important, because that's what truly defined from a data analytics and AI space is like, what is your operating model and your rhythm and how do you do it? So to me, it's fundamental and key to scale. But the second part of it, the hybrid, I think that's human plus AI. I mean, that's whether you like it or not, this is the future.
Yeah.
So you got to embrace that, that AI part of it. We build a lot of agents, so it's not agentic yet, but agents. And we said, it's like, hey, operation teams, it's like, these are all your chats agents, you own it. You're responsible for making sure they're accurate. You're responsible to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and really helping and measuring to make sure you own it. You're responsible for their performance review. Simple. So human plus AI, let's come in and you just have to embrace and just run with it.
Yeah. And Mira, you talked about earlier, if you build something and only 5 people use it, it's not a successful case. So how do you look at really scaling that within the organizations, whether it's that change management or really the organizing model, but really get people to buy into the things that are really, really driving overall growth and efficiency with AI?
Yeah, I just learned through a big failure. We built this really pretty tool out for our plant workers. Really pretty. I thought it was like the sexiest thing we built, but zero adoption. Because we had a lot of colors, and I was like, man, this is like amazing. This is like Apple feel. But what we learned was just like, this has not been used because they thought it's complicated, too many things to choose, the colors and all of that. They just wanted black and white, right? So things that we learned from that is the user in mind. The whole design thinking was something we missed. So it's like, going back, doing the design thinking, user in mind, and we're building for a plant worker. I mean, there's blue collar worker. So they have a very different mindset. They're just there to just click, 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 do the work and go on. And if you get this all, it doesn't work. So design thinking is a key to it. Number 2, it's like incentivizing and really selling that point from a top down. It's like, making sure it's, make that as a game, gamify it, for the adoption. So different, I'm talking about the plan, but same thing from an office worker too. It's like, how do we make this part of the incentivize? And the leaders have to lead from the front to show the adoption, right? So you're telling somebody, it's like, get off the Excel and go do this, and you're still in your own looking at the Excel. It doesn't make sense. So lead from the front. And the lastly is like, have the continuous feedback loop. Listen to your users, listen to this, and bring those back quickly. It's like, don't listen and come back 6 months later. It's like, oh, we got to fix here. Got to be really agile. It's like you heard something, bring it back right away and show it. So we use some really good nifty tools to really build into the product to drive that. So which really did. So, I mean, our implementation on plant, had over about 70% sort of adoption, right? So that's where the value come in. We did something for the sales side as well. 5,000 salespeople using one single platform. It's no joke. But getting that to that point is the same principle.
Yeah. Vivian.
Yeah, and I would talk about experimentation in general, not only AI, because that's our bread and butter. What happens usually is that if you don't align in the very beginning what you're trying to solve for, and also have the buy-in of these people that want to learn, if we prove that right, will you adopt? Is this something that we can pre-commit? Because otherwise, it's about just learning for the sake of learning. Then return of learning never meets return of investment. And we are there to match these two things. Reason why we have this robust service line, because it gotta go from learning to impact, to return of investment. So what we try to do is to first ensure the hypothesis or whatever we are experimenting is scalable since the very beginning of that. Because otherwise, that's not for the company. That doesn't fit what we need at that stage. Then we pre-align this kind of game. If we prove, are you in? And then we connect all the markets in the world in that direction. There is a very important component, which is also we monetize the potential value of the adoption of that particular practice. I think this is also a unlock. Because sometimes people are like, yeah, that's common sense. I knew that because that's how the industry performed. Yeah, but have you changed your mix of investment based on what you knew? No, because you're not quite sure. This is how much more effectiveness you might have in your dollars if you go that direction as opposed to that direction. So this is something that we have done. And finally, bringing people along to decode the findings, because that's the beautiful moment. The moment that we come together, that's what we learn, team. And now, let's just strike adoption, because everything has been already aligned. You are not waiting for the alignment to come in the end. When it happens, it's very hard. because it's way harder to fix for something, right? Rather than kind of kick it off the process with the right alignment and expectations in place. So that's how we have it. Not perfect at all, lots of, kind of challenges, but conceptually, I think we have found a way to navigate.
I just wanted to add one point that it was important that I missed, which is when we're building something, build something that is part of the flow, not outside.
Yeah, that's a
So
good
this
one.
is really important because
Yeah.
anytime you break the flow, it just
Exactly.
it impacts the adoption.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah. And I think when you think about our technology components that we have, or the different kinds of technology platforms that our people are going to be using, they're made up of these different components. I think we can think about AI as being one of those components that you can sort of plug in, plug out of those technology platforms in the future as well, right? So when you design a product in that way, you can make sure that the adoption is going to be there because people are going to be using that same kind of platform, right? It both makes it a bit more of a seamless experience for the users where you can have them using AI without them even really realizing how much AI is behind those platforms. And you're just giving people the comfort of the same kind of interface, the same kind of platform that they're using today to get their job done. And hopefully you're doing it in a way that makes it easier and better for them.
One of my favorite topics and within CI&T, we're very obsessed with measurement and metrics. It's part of our DNA. So when we talk about scaling AI across the enterprise, you guys have highlighted different areas of ROI. Vivian, you talked about the practice or not interrupting the flow. What level of conversations are you guys having within your organization or with boards or just in general outside of that? Is it at the level where it is really driving EBITDA advantage to the company, or is it within, if I'm really showing value at the value stream level, or is it at adoption or just general efficiency overall? I think there's so many measures that can kind of build into that. And certainly there's different understandings within the organizations in terms of where you want to be. So Mihir, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, we all, ROI, everybody understand. Then there's ROE, right? So return on efficiency, because I think this is a paradigm that came up and really need to have a focus on it. So with that understanding, like at the end of the day, the work that we do has to make an impact at some level, right? So like at Crabs, it's like EBITDA. Net sales, right? So at the end of the day, the top line metrics has to be impacted. And that's what we do. When we actually look at commercializing or scaling it, we look at every product has to hit a KPI. If not, then how we would measure it, how we roll up, how we do it, right? The second part is sometimes, team actually thinks like this will come later. But the problem is it will never come then, because you have not built the foundation to really affect the KPI, whether it's CFRs to whether it's to OEE to any of the metrics on the promotions and all that. So all of those have to tie back to whether you're doing forecasting. So forecasting has to be tied back to really improving the forecasting. You're not doing forecasting. So all the teams that we have, they're based on two things. When we build a product team, they have objective. The objective is adoption and scale, because we want to make sure that's still the thing, but also the KPIs they're impacting. So every quarter, so it's an iterative thing, it's built on it. So all those metrics matter, and that's why it's important for tech to really understand the business, and that's why those product teams make sense, because they're a cross-functional team. It's not a bunch of tech just sitting there and just like following direction and nodding their head. It's like, I'll go make this happen, but I have no idea what they did. So that's why those business-led cross-functional team is really important to really build something that's lasting and delivering value. So KPIs are important, but I would balance the KPI with NPS and adoption and all that, because that really gives the balance to both. And then keeping in mind, it's like there's ROE too. So it's like generative AI, it's like, it's there, but the measurement of it is different. It's like, I know there's people in the room that I worked on some solution here for generative AI, in terms of SDLC. It's like, we were struggling to prove value. I was like, the value is not ROI, the value is ROE. And we did a great job of showing that measurement. So it's like having that balance and driving that, from the organization leadership, I think that's going to be important.
Yeah. Vivian?
Yeah, I would say in the big scheme of the organization, having the right governance and the right people to, kind of make the bold choices and understand how to prioritize things, I think that's a good and important element. Also, aligning expectations in terms of what we are solving here, because you might have a different expectation of the outcome of the journey, but it needs to be discussed in the very beginning so no one is frustrated, and then the KPI will kind of be guided by that conversation that you are having. Sometimes we have lots of solutions looking for problems and not the other way around, so you fit the problem just because you like the solution, and we try to avoid that. So I think that's smart and that's good. And I would say that for AI, having that safety net is wonderful because then all pieces of the business can kind of collaborate to that conversation as well. So that's what I would bet more.
And thinking about this concept of metrics to check and to measure the performance of AI, I think there is a bit of a maturity framework there as well, where the first sort of level people tend to look for is, how can I sort of show that an individual with AI is worth this many individuals without AI, right? And so you could sort of come up with sort of the labor savings, right, or an efficiency savings from it. But I think that's really the more basic kind of view of it. As you start thinking more and more along where you can go, you get to the point where you're saying, well, what's possible with AI that was just impossible previously, right? And that's something where you can start looking at supply chain disruptions, right? Of having these massive data sets that it's impossible, no matter how many people you have, you just can't do that kind of a work. But now you can anticipate things that you couldn't do before, right? You can anticipate customer demands that you didn't know before. You can sort of you can develop that level of intimacy, right? Which just wasn't possible in the past. And I think having those new possibilities opened up for people really drives a lot of value over the long term.
Great. Yeah. And last question, and give my panelists a break. I did not let them know I was going to throw this curveball to them, but when we talk about scaling AI, it's really running a race where the ground is moving. And it's very difficult to predict the future. So I'm not going to ask you guys to predict the future, but what advice would you give to the audience as you guys have gone through this, what to stay away from? And we've talked about organizing principles, product, all those things that they should do. What are some things that'll help them understand these areas just to stay away from entirely, especially since it's moving so fast paced? So I'm going to open up. Who wants to be the first person to talk about that?
The word that comes to my mind is mindset.
Yeah.
And it has always been there for the digital transformation, and people, sometimes we don't pay that much attention. So identifying really the right talent to go through a process of a lot of disruption, abstract thinking, but that gets down to very concrete. So there is a very special set of talent and skills that we need to look for. So having the right people on the bus, because it's very hard to define the destination. But if you have the team that it's able to hang in there and let's learn as we go. And I learn a lot with CI&T, by the way, how to slice, have a vision, but slice how you're going to get there. So we lower anxiety, and also we learn as we go. I think that's very critical. It's going to be different, but if you have people that have the right ship, the right mindset to navigate that, we will figure it out beautifully, and we are going to be in a way better space. It's not about the technology, in my point of view. It's about the people and how these people will lead the next steps.
I think you're right that this space is moving so quickly, right, that it's impossible to sort of predict where you're going to be, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, probably even 6 months from now.
Yeah.
That ends up being really, really difficult. I think probably the best advice that I could sort of give, or sort of the best thoughts that I would have in this kind of a session, is wherever that goes, that having good quality data is going to be absolutely key, right? So the market can go in lots of different areas, technologies can go in lots of different areas, but fundamentally, big enterprises need to get their data in good shape, right? And that includes having systems that are modern, systems that have right master data, people have common data models, making sure you have that data that's accessible. So I think the smarter enterprises right now are really saying, we don't know quite what's going to happen at that AI layer yet, but we're going to get our data in good shape, so we're ready to take advantage of wherever that AI layer sort of goes in the future. Yeah.
How many of you here are from business, not tech? Meaning, good to know, because I was going to say something. Now I'm going to reframe that. So in terms of, look, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we've heard many times from a tech leadership, right? You come back and say, it's like, oh, business says agentic AI is going to solve my problem, or chatbot, or whatever it is, right? And the problem is like, they're coming and telling the tech team, we got to go do this, right? So this is like, putting the solution in front without solving what we need to solve for. So my recommendation to myself and reminder to myself on the tech is like, make sure we're up ahead looking and making sure we're aligning the business and sharing that, like, a road ahead. It's like, that we're looking. Let them know that you're looking ahead. Because if not, then you're going to be just thrown with solutions like, you have to. Sometimes you have good support. You can actually push the business to say, let's align on the business problem. So number one, build that partnership with business to make sure they trust you to really take you to the next frontier. Whether it's AI, whether it's AR, VR, whether it's like, I don't know, whatever in the next. So that's number one. Number two, encourage the learning mindset. So I think that a lot of the time is just, the experimentation parts. Like, the learnings are not, I'm not saying make some blunders and come back and be proud of it. It's just encourage that learning mindset and show that, because that's going to really push the team. I can tell you, it's like, I just got an email this morning coming out. It's like, hey, somebody said, oh, oops, we did this. I said, that's okay. It's like, but you recognize it right away. It's within the sprint. You know it. You can go back and fix it. It's totally cool. And bring that learning mindset. So I think you have to lead from the front to really be okay to do it. I think me and Keith, we were talking about this, is like, when somebody is like, got really upset at the team, be aligned that says, oh, learning is good, and then all of a sudden blew up in the meeting. That's not a behavior. So leadership behavior is really, really important. And the last thing is like, making sure it's like, it's about the people, what we build and the solutions we build. So it's like, really putting the people and the culture first. Because if not, then it won't scale, it won't work, deliver value, whatever you want. So that's
Great.
my.
I think what's interesting, and the panelists said it is, they're still going through the learning process, but certainly some of the things that were important were the ideas of the organizing principles, understanding that they had a plan, building out that measurement, and a big part, it's the mindset. So regardless, it's that understanding that as things change, how do we create people that are more adaptable as part of that? So give it up for the Powerhouse panelists.
Thank you, guys.
What? Yeah. So thank you so much. I think we're going to go on a little break right now. A reminder, Rodrigo is outside. He's running product demos of our Flow orchestration platform. So he's happy to walk people through that. But outside of that, you've got a few minutes to network amongst yourself or grab more refreshments out there. So thank you again.
Thank you, guys. Okay.